Managing stress and getting more new patients in the new year. It's Paul Dr. Nacho here with our awesome sponsor, Matt Brown of Energize. Matt and his company have been supporting our community. He's been topping the group with fun. He's a big F1 fan. So Matt, just for those in the group that don't know you yet, share a little bit about your story, what you do both to help dentists and also in your regular life.
So I've been in dental now about 4 years. I'm one of the two founders of Energize Group. A former member of our government special operations
Wow.
community. I'm a bone cancer survivor. I have a
Wow.
above leg amputee on my left side. And in my personal life, I just honestly I try to spend as much time as I can with my kids and my wife. I try to manage my time well to make sure I have communication blackouts. So I'm dedicated to my wife and my family, and we scuba dive, we go off-roading, we do a lot of really fun adventurous stuff. I traveled to
Oh,
a couple of
cool.
the F1 races, and we just had my 41st birthday this past week. And my wife did a 2-day backcountry off-roading trip. And then we did the Special Forces off-road center where they train the Green Berets how to drive off-road. And then we came back home this past week. So we're kind of like an experiences over things family.
Love that.
We will blow money on experiences.
Well,
Like, I mean,
happy
I'll throw
birthday.
down. Yeah.
And we're going to talk about a number of things, but as you were talking, it made me think of something. My
Oh,
awesome dad was a dentist in our community for 41 years. I practiced him for 11 years before he sadly passed away. But one of the greatest parts of my life was practicing with him. Amazing dad and mentor. And, back in the 1980s, when I was born in 77, they'd say, Dr. Goodman, coach some of the sports teams so people know you in the community. And my dad was a big sports fan anyway, so he coached my basketball teams, my baseball teams. But it was a way for him to meet people outside of in his office and then to get to know them. Now, you've been in the Nacho group and sharing things about F1 racing. You shared that off-roading post,
yeah.
which got a lot of traction. I guess pun intended. I don't know much about off-roading, but I feel like traction's part of it, involved in it.
Traction is part of
And
it. Yeah.
and you've been kind of commenting, there seems like there's a lot of stress on Earth, and I agree, right? Running this
Yeah.
Facebook group, if we're just going to be real, there's a lot of awesome parts and there's a lot of annoying parts. And I'm here to be as helpful as possible. I notice, not just in Facebook, there's kind of this pervasive stress. Maybe it's this hangover after the pandemic. Maybe it's stuff with the economy. Maybe it's with difficult things at the end of the year. What are some of your thoughts on that?
It's funny. I feel like a lot of the stress we find in our lives today, people unduly put on themselves. I think that sometimes people hyper focus on the negatives and they don't ever get a chance to actually take account of what their positives are. Um, I find, at least for me, people kind of identify with themselves in two ways. One is, they identify with all their negatives and they really attach themselves to them, or they identify with all their positives and really attach themselves to them. I've had to train my brain to go the positive route, and even then, I still have my struggles, but I feel like a lot of it when I read it, and especially there's a guy who posted recently in Nacho's group, and he was open for a while and struggling. I think he's doing 40K a month in collections or something like that, and he was feeling really down. And what's really kind of crazy is I feel like that internal stress and that you letting it pulling you down will ultimately affect you a lot of places, your relationships, your chairside
Yeah.
manner, all kinds of stuff. I think we try to fix all these external things that we don't really have a lot of control over. And we have to kind of look at ourselves and say, well, I have to get positive again to be positive, to be effective, right? So
For
I think
sure.
sometimes I look at it and it's like, man, you're really beating yourself up about a lot of things that you really can't control.
And
And
I
that's what I
love that.
find.
I love that, Chair. It's so true. It's also, just to give you some insight, is into dentists. I know people have sometimes said this about other things they've done. I don't know how this fits with, military or sports, but dentists in our training, we're just told what's wrong, right? You did this
Yeah.
wrong. You're not good enough. And if someone wants a fun activity for the holiday season, the movie Bad Moms Christmas with Mila Kunis is very funny and very poignant, because in the movie, the moms are constantly telling their daughters how much their Christmas stink. It's never good enough. Your Christmas is never
Yeah.
good enough, right? And
Yeah.
I said that's what it's like to be in dental school, where we have sometimes there's good people in dental school, but the vibe a lot of times is you did this wrong, you're not going to get it right. And then when you get out into the real world, you just don't really have any happiness metrics, we should say. So, I mean, you help dentists all the time get more patients in dealing with dentists. What are some of the things that you've seen, A, they struggle with, and B, how you help them be more successful with?
I think one thing that happens that I see a lot with startup dentists when I'm dealing with them and I see in their mindset, they go from being an associate all the time. So they're an associate for a few years and somebody else is lining up a day's worth of work for them and they come in, they do that work all day long. And then they get brave enough and they go, I'm going to go sign for a practice loan. I'm going to do a startup. And they do it and they're 3 or 4 months in and they feel kind of like it's not what they expected because they're expecting the same level, the same operational tempo of all this work all day long. But now they're meeting new patients all day long and they're introducing themselves to patients and they're having to navigate people as before they're navigating clinically. And I feel like when they do that startup path and there isn't existing patients and every single appointment is a new patient consult, I feel like they didn't mentally prepare for that op
Yeah.
tempo change. They literally go like, when do I start doing the work? Like you might start doing work in 6, 7 months. And
Right.
they're like, so I just have to go in and sell myself over and over again. I never wanted to be in sales or they're just not, they haven't prepared themselves properly for the op tempo. And I see them get really frustrated by it.
I, I,
And
I couldn't agree more because it's a different muscle to
complete different muscle.
work with a patient you've never met and doesn't know you versus someone who knows you. It's also really difficult. At the end of the day, it's very difficult to sell stuff people don't really want. You know, they need it, but
Yeah.
big fan of this guy, Nate Bargatze. He's got a good joke on water heaters. He says, I'm like not the man of the house. My wife knows more about water heaters. And it's a funny joke, but like nobody probably is very happy to buy a new water heater, but they are
No.
very happy to buy a vacation. And us dentists have to get up every day and sell help, I say, of stuff that people do not want, but they need. And it's can be demoralizing. And that's maybe, let's call this out for a second. You're a marketer and you
Hmm?
drive new patients to dentist offices and
Yes.
they call the phone and let's just say they make the appointment.
Hmm?
But if they are getting a lot of new patients and not closing enough cases, what do you recommend to close that gap? Is it front desk training? Because I've had people say my marketing doesn't work, but the marketer is saying
No.
I get them 100 new patients a month. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so first, you have to identify what the KPI is that the marketer is measuring themselves as being successful, right? So if they're actually getting them patients that are actually making it in the door, okay, so we have to assume the marketer's not holding himself up on clicks and views. He's
Yeah.
saying, I put this many people in the practice. So if that's good, right? Humans make the chair, right? That's what matters. The first thing is sometimes we have to kind of figure out where we should draw our kind of like our confidence from in dealing with that patient. As dentists, you guys have two unique business conditions in America. First, everyone needs you. It's pretty awesome.
Right.
Second is everyone fears you. So if they make it all the way to the chair, they've overcome the barrier of fear, right? So we can say they're motivated for treatment on some level. Didn't say they can afford it. Said they're motivated. I think sometimes I've watched case presenters actually talk themselves out of treatment as opposed to assuming treatment and just going with the flow
Right.
and bringing the patient on the patient path. Sometimes I feel like you guys think that you have to sell. And it's not necessarily having to sell. It's just the patient's here, I'm here, the chair is here. They overcame fear. Let's just get them to treatment. And as you speak about it, don't speak about it as if you're doing it. It's just about how we're doing it and when we're
I
doing it.
love that. I mean, I always say, I give a lot of lectures on this, and I say, who doesn't like to sell things? Who doesn't think dentists should sell? And many dentists raise their hand and say, okay, no problem. Do this instead. Just connect with people and motivate them
Yeah.
to move forward. Connect with
Yes.
people and motivate them to move forward. And maybe for people like me and Andrew Vallow, we find I think I'm selling help, so I'm thrilled to do it, right? I don't think sell is
Yeah.
a bad thing at all. But I know depending on how you grew up, when you went to dental school, maybe you have to reframe it as I am motivating people to move forward, which is a line from To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink, which is a great book to read. So you're telling us that you have got to identify where these gaps are, because if patients are coming into your chair, that's a big hurdle that they've leapt over.
Oh yeah, they definitely have.
Next thing I'd like you to share value with this audience is, let's say you retire from this whole marketing thing and all you do is you help dentists ask other marketers questions to identify if they're a good fit, right? So
Yeah.
what should a dentist, let's play this game. I'm a dentist. I got a practice doing $1 million a year. I want to grow it. It's got 5 operatories. I can do some implants. And I go, hey, Matt, I want you to tell me some questions I should ask marketing companies. What are some good questions to ask marketing companies?
So can we do it in reverse? So
Sure.
can we do it where what are the questions a good marketer should ask you if he understands your business as a dentist?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that if a marketer, so we have an intake process at Energize. We do an interview. It's about 15 minutes, way before you can do a demo, and it's just to make sure that you're a good fit for us and make sure we're a good fit for you. The worst scenario in the world is for us to be in a relationship together. We're 6 months down the road, and we should never been in a relationship.
Yeah.
No one wants that, right? I think that they need to ask you, of course, what your goals are. I think you should beware of marketers that ask you what your budget is early. We don't actually ever ask the budget question. We don't believe in it. We believe in asking, what is your current collections? What is your collections goal overall monthly? How many ops do you have? How many clinical days a week are you open? Also, what treatment plans do you drive traffic to? What is your passion in dentistry? And trying to figure out based on those things and the market you're in, what does it take to get you to your goal? Not what is your budget and how do I sell a bunch of stuff and fit it
Yeah.
into your budget, right? So we try to look at operatory hours like inventory and
Like that.
your treatment styles like variety of inventory. And then based on those things and marketing costs in your market, I can mathematically say to get you to your goals, we need to be at this spend and be able to get this level of return based on the data to get you there, right? I think when the dentist meets with the marketer should spend more time learning about your business and you and your passion in dentistry and less time trying to sell you on the product. Because for them to sell you properly and have a plan for you, I mean, dentistry is a complex thing, man.
Yeah.
Every dentist has a very large clinical ability, right? I'll ask a dentist, what kind of treatment style, if you could order patients like their pizza, what treatment styles would you order? And they'll tell me everything their clinical ability. And they'll call me 2 months later and say, hey, you gave me 40 denture patients in the last 2 months. I'm like, you said you could do dentures.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
like doing them. Well, I need you to tell me that. That's why I said if you could order them like their pizza. I don't like anchovies. I'm not ordering anchovies, man. That's why I phrased it that way. We truly care about what it is you want to be doing with your hand time. Like your hand in that operatory, what would make you feel fulfilled as a practitioner? Another question that we use that I think a lot of marketers don't use, which is really important, which goes back to your thing. If we put people in your chair and they don't accept, we have to diagnose why. One question we have is, how would you rate your clinical ability on a or your clinical bravery on a 1 to 10? And we
Okay.
use 1 scared stiff just being out of school, 10 being reckless. Both are bad, right?
Right.
But when we ask that question, we're trying to gauge how apt you are to refer out versus keep in. Because if I'm driving a bunch of traffic for something and then you're turning around referring it out, then it's a waste of marketing dollars,
Right.
right?
And that's
So
why I want to just
good.
interject that, and this conversation is awesome. I'm a football fan, Eagles fan, and this is kind of on
Of course you
brand
are.
here. Is the Eagles have a play called the brotherly shove, and they're the best in the league at it. So basically, they hike it to the quarterback, Jalen Hurts, and they push him 1 or 2, 3 yards out to get a first down or a touchdown. And I love this because I didn't like it when the quarterback would either hand the ball off at the goal line or pass it, as we know what happened to the Seahawks and Patriots. But I now want to bring this to dentistry. That final handoff to score the touchdown is the patient paying, right?
Yes,
That's it.
100%.
Nothing happens unless the patient pays, right?
Correct.
Doesn't matter
Correct.
if they love implants, you do a great job. So this handoff to the payment, what are some tips you would give dentists? I mean, you help guys like Dr. Andrew get implant cases. They know what they're doing, but sometimes we see it in the red zone in football. They can't get that ball in the end
Oh,
zone. They
yeah, the
can't get the
list.
patient to pay. Any tips you could layer in
Yeah,
for us?
the test last 10% is the hardest, it seems like in dentistry for some reason. So 90% of Americans are payment buyers, right? So like it's just reality. Like everything over a couple $1,000s in America is financed on some level by most consumers. And with that being said, consumers are conditioned to payments as low as payments starting at. I think it's very critically important when you offer a full comprehensive exam or a full comprehensive treatment plan that's large, that you offer an example of monthly payment way before
Yeah.
you ever run their credit. And this, when I say this is like not done, it's like not done in 80% of practices, from what I can tell. A lot of times, an office manager or a case presenter's definition of offering financing options is handing them a care credit brochure and letting them go home. That's
Yeah.
not offering financing. It's your treatment plan's $4,000, or it could be a monthly payment of 141 a month. Which one's best for you? And then when they say, oh, I'll do the 141 a month, I'll close to a credit app and look at you an approval and see where you're at. I think it's very important to offer that monthly payment example early because it is the preferred buying method in the United States. The other thing that happens too is a lot of times practices restrict their offerings to 12 and 6 month 0% with care credit because they want to protect their patient from interest. If we go back to our mission, which is to do what's best for the patient all the time, what's best for the patient is to get as much treatment done as soon as possible, and possibly offering that patient that high interest loan might be the only way they can access care.
And
So
I love what you're saying. It took me a little bit of time to totally get on board with this, but I have a mother-daughter team at my office that both did implant cases. They both can chew and smile with confidence. And the best thing for them was to stretch it out with this they were a sponsor at the time called Compassionate Finance. I think there's something different
yeah,
now.
I've
And
heard
it
of
was
them.
the first time I've done it. And I'm so proud that I was open-minded enough, because if I had given them to traditional financing companies, they might not have gotten approved.
Yeah,
And whether they pay extra interest is meaningless, because they now
yeah.
can chew and feel good about themselves. And why do you think, Matt, like, what happened to dentists? Like, let's say $20,000. Why do we care? You go to Bed Bath and Beyond. Bed Bath and Beyond's out of business now. That's not a good one. If you go to what's the one we buy all the furniture from? Not like a Restoration Hardware. If you
Yeah.
want to buy $20,000 worth of couches, the
Oh.
salesperson doesn't have some ethical conundrum. Like, why did this happen with us?
So I think it's a mindset thing. So you guys are kind of
Pottery Barn.
engineer
Sorry, Pottery Barn. That was the one I was thinking.
engineer minded, analytical people. Okay. And I think you're an extrovert, but a lot of my dentists are introverts. And I think that dental professionals tend to be. But I think also the person that becomes a case presenter, I feel like is like a failed assistant who worked her way front to the front desk and then became a case presenter. And I feel like a lot of these people are repurposed. They were never intended for sales. And that repurposed personality isn't open to, I'm offering somebody a $40,000 treatment plan, which is the cost of a car. And that number is extremely intimidating and it's scary.
Yeah.
When you're a salesperson, you become so confident dealing with people and navigating them that you can give me any number, and as long as I'm selling a product I believe in that has good value to that individual, and that doesn't mean nefarious, right? I feel like it's easy to get a yes if they need it and it provides good value, and they're already in the market looking for it. I feel like when we do it in healthcare, it feels like we're doing something wrong, and
Which
we're
is
not.
crazy.
It's crazy to me. If our mission, if we go back to it, I like to isolate things down to very small, very focused missions. Our mission is to do what's best for the patient all the time. A lot of times I'll watch case presenters phase things out before ever offering the full amount to the patient. I'm like, why? And they'll say, well, I don't think they can afford that. It's not your job to be their mother or their father or their financial advisor. It's your job to offer them full care. And then when they say no and tell you what they can afford, then work backwards from there. But preemptively making it smaller is being selfish because we're doing it for our own comfort of the conversation that's going to be uncomfortable rather than doing it with a loyalty of what's absolutely best for that patient no matter what.
I love
So,
this. I mean, if you just broke it down, I teach my team to do this. It's like, you have a case to say, hey, Mrs. Smith, to chew and smile with confidence, you're going to invest $40,000. One way to take care of that is to take care of it all at once and get a payment upfront discount, or spread it out over time. Which one sounds better? And in that, like, 1 second, they're going to just push you down a road. And you know what's
yeah,
crazy, Matt? Many people, you know what they say? I want to pay it all at once and get a small discount. And then you're
yeah,
done. The whole
yeah.
conversation's over.
Some
You
do, yeah.
just, and then if they don't say that, say, oh, if you want to spread out over time, here's a few ways to do it. And if you just talk, I always say, talk to people like people, not like weird other dentists, and magic will happen. But dentists are so in their own head, right? They're just so in their own head. And I think one of the reasons why they have, whether they elevate an assistant or someone else, is because they're like the absolute worst at talking about money. Like, the dentist is
Yes.
the worst. Like, anyone else in the office is often better than them.
Yeah, and I also believe in this. I believe that the dentist should be the compassionate caregiver and the case presenter should be the cash register. I really kind of advise that the dentist really shouldn't get into money much. It should be like maybe a light
I like
pass
it
at the
too,
money.
because we're all easily tricked. For example, I went and bought this RDX a few years ago for the family, and like the sales guy, tells me about it and all the bells and whistles. And then they they always walk you into the room for the money guy, right?
Yeah,
And like, it's not the sales guy. It's like, friendly guy from the showroom is not the guy for the money. And even though they're working in what my grandmother would call cahoots,
yeah,
the experience is different. That's why I love when you hand it off to your team member to pay. But kind of getting back to my example, if you hand it off to somebody who fumbles the ball, the whole case
yeah.
is lost.
It's bad. So yeah, we actually had I love how data driven Energize is. So I can see everything aggregate across all of our practices. And going back to that, we had two practices in Houston, Texas, north of Houston in the Woodlands. They were about 2.5 miles apart. One was just killing it. One, I mean, one, I could throw anything in their chair and somehow they got to treatment. It was amazing. And the other one was just struggling. They're banging their heads against the wall. I really felt for them. And we had a meeting and we talked, and I was able to see the data and actually saw patients who went to the struggling practice, said no to treatment, and ended up at practice two where they weren't struggling and got treatment of pretty high value.
Yeah.
And because I could see it from my view down, because I see all the data, um, it was interesting to see. So I talked to I talked to the staff, and the staff and the doc wanted to complain the market, the marketing, the style of the ads, all this stuff. But the patients are the humans are in the chair, right? And I said, I have this other practice nearby, and I'm not going into details of showing anything that violated HIPAA. I just showed them some round numbers of who was producing in the area for us. And I was like, if we take the people in practice one, the humans, so we pick them up and put them in practice two, will the results move with the people? And the doc's like, yeah. And I'm like, so is it the market? Is it all these things? Or do we have to do some inner looking
Yeah.
at this? I think there's a fallacy in dental that I get in trouble because I attack this all the time, but I will. Um, this ideal patient concept. So there's I think there's a fallacy in dental that dentists kind of put on themselves, and they say, I want my ideal patient. A consultant or somebody at some point got them to go through this conversation, and they listed out who their ideal patient was, and they get fixated on this target, and they build a practice, and that's what they want. They want a cookie cutter version of that person to come in, and they start getting something other than that, and they start saying, well, I'm not getting the right person,
Yeah.
so that's why it's not working. Well, I hate to tell the dental world this. The ideal patient concept is total horseshit, and I'm really clear about it. It's more important for us to provide the ideal dentist to the patient than the ideal patient to the dentist. If you think about it, the whole digital world is set up that way. You cannot leave a review for a patient, but they can leave a review for you. The whole shopping process is designed for that patient to find the dentist they want, not for you to find the patient you want. I think sometimes when that happens, these other elements, it's easy to start blaming these things rather than saying, what can we
Yeah.
do to get better? Like when was the last time you role played from check in to check out and offering comfort items? When was the time you actually practiced a chairside manner? Which I think me and you both know. If you ask docs when was the time they invested anything in chairside manner, the answer is always like, I haven't.
Yeah, no, you're delivering absolute gold for our audience to start to pay attention to things that are outside of crown preps and outside of
Yes,
implant placement angles and the things, you have to do the fun stuff. I mean, I'm sorry, you have to do the stuff that you might think is fun so you can do the fun stuff. And, to some people, the marketing and the case presentation is most fun. And to other dentists, they shy away from it. But if you never do it, you don't get to deliver all of those things to people. And I think that, in that example, we're going to wrap in a minute, but in that example, was the other client that was struggling, were they able to have any aha moments or anything that was, got them to pivot a little?
yeah, they did. So we couldn't tell them the names of patients, obvious for HIPAA, but I said, you had 6 patients I know for a fact said no to you guys and said yes to $5,000 to $10,000 treatment over here within 2 days. This deal, guys, when a patient starts going and doing consults and looking around, they're going to get treatment pretty rapidly. Like they don't like come to you, then just walk away from the whole concept of treatment. They
Yeah.
go to you, they reject you, then they go to the next dentist and they like them, right? And it's one of those things where it's really easy to blame these little elements, but it's like, what can we do to have done better? And I think a lot of times part of the problem is if you're shying away from this element, right? Like that part's my uncomfortable part. That's where you need to run 100%. Like
Yeah.
if you're a dentist, you're like, hey, I really don't like the talking to the humans part of it, then that's what you need to run towards. You need to make
Yeah,
that your thing.
or get an ally that can help you with that,
Yeah.
on your team. So I love what you've shared. I love what you're doing for our community. When people want to reach out to Energize and do a demo, do a console, I know my team's dropping this in the
Yeah.
chats, our Nacho link as a sponsor, but how could they reach out to you directly, Matt?
Matt at energize-group.com is probably the best way to email me. I think we gave you guys a number you can
Yeah,
also text me at. You can text me that number that they have. They'll probably put it up or they'll put it on this link. But you can text or email me, grab a demo. Like I said, the first part of our demo, we do a whole question and answer center to know your practice and kind of give you our view of how you get to your goals. as opposed to it being just salesy. It's kind of there's, I mean, I've had a lot of docs meet with me and say, I've never looked at my practice the way you just looked at it. You opened up my eyes to a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't be marketing yet. Sometimes we have
Yeah.
docs that come to us and they're like, yeah, I have 2 ops and I'm remodeling right now. Let's start marketing. We're like, yeah, probably not smart.
Yeah, I love that you reframe it and think, well, thanks for doing what you do. Super grateful for you. Stick around for a minute, but Nacho Crew, check out Energize. Make decisions for your practice that not only increase your money, but also your morale. Thanks so much, Matt.